after action report, who is right versus who's to blame. And last but not least, in order to build trust, you have to keep communication lines short. Welcome to the KSP Partnership book review of It Worked for Me by the late Colin Powell. Our book reports tend to be at least 2 sections long. And it was tough because the lessons that you can learn from the book, It Worked for Me, are numerous. One of the things I'd like you to think about is just the leadership lesson that's imbued in the title. It worked for me. Not this will work, not this always worked, not you should do this. It worked for me. Now think of the strength of character, self-worth, confidence, and at the same time, a humble appreciation for all the different ways contexts could be so vastly different. It worked for him. The first thing that I want to bring up is a very project leadership driven concept. It's what the military refers to as the after action report, or AAR. I'm a big fan. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we engage and encourage people to do is to consider doing after action reports a little more frequently, just a little. The end of a project isn't the only time that it makes sense to do an after action report or lessons learned or retrospective. And in fact, the end of a sprint isn't. The end of a scrum isn't. It's any time we have a significant deliverable that we have completed, that we have delivered. And that's not a bad idea to do an after action report about all of the things that happened and our assessment, our balanced assessment, one hopes, of what went well and what could have gone a little bit better. So the after action report, a couple of hints about the after action report. Number 1, give serious thought to doing the after action report based on anybody's suggestion that it would be a good idea. Not just yours and not just something that's automatically put on the calendar. 2, make it clear that all offers of information are welcome, including the things that went well, the things that a colleague did that you really appreciated. You know, public displays of appreciation are incredibly powerful. I believe we spoke about that in our book review on rituals for virtual meetings. You might want to take it a look. Also, don't you think it might be a little bit trust building and encouraging of inclusion and open communications in a safe environment if anybody could suggest that now might be a good time for an after action report? It's not something that's done because it's on a checklist, and it's not something done just because someone in a leadership position suggests it. And then there's asking questions. Building a healthy and productive culture, well, that's tough. One of the things that can help is to ask the question, who is right, what is right, as opposed to who's to blame and what's wrong. People aren't stupid. And you know this, you work with some incredibly bright folks. Well, you know, you are one of them after all. So asking the question, who's right, as opposed to who's to blame, can do a couple of things. Number one, it lowers the emotional temperature just a little bit. Not a bad thing. Number two, it gives people the opportunity to examine where things are going exactly as they should be, or where counsel has been offered that is precisely what it should be. Last but not least, trust and the role of short communication lines. If you haven't ever played it, there is a game that's known alternatively as the laundry line game or the telephone game or the campfire game. And it's any time that you have more than about 3 people in the room, you tell stories. So I would tell a story to Alana, for example, who works in the front lobby. And she would tell the story to Stephen, who's an amazing photographer in the area, who's also a member of the Burns co-working community. And then Steve would tell Josie, whose dog Moxie you might occasionally run into in a couple of the videos. I'm privileged to be one of her favorite people. And she keeps bringing me her toy to play with her. So it hits the ground, and if you hear a little, that would be that. But by the time Josie tells me the story that theoretically is what I told Elena, that sounds completely different. And that difference is simple human nature, but it can engender fractured trust, bruised trust, or even broken trust. Because you kind of wonder to yourself, who told the story to make it different? So one of the ways of building trust is to have as short a line of communication as possible. One-to-one, absolutely the best. I think part of what makes so many of these lessons so powerful is that he illustrates them with stories. And that is one of the most powerful communication tools that you can use. Not the least because it says, look, this is how it worked when I did it. Not a bad idea. Leading by example. If you've been watching any of the KSP Partnership videos, you know I believe that to be one of the strongest ways to help people change their behaviors and understand how their belief systems actually affect their behaviors. If you like these book reports and you think there's a book that we really ought to take a look at in terms of how it affects leadership and leadership-driven project management, please let us know. In the meantime, you'll notice that in the bumper, we'll have not just the book title, but also the ISBN so that you can pick it up. Please join us. Reading is one of my favorite ways to expand the world, and I hope that you have enjoyed this little report. Part 2 will be coming soon.